Thanks for joining us in the Green Room from the Heritage Foundation. I'm Rob Bluey, and today we're joined by Congressman Fred Upton, Chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee in the U.S. House. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, for sure.
Now, this week the House is expected to vote on the Jobs and Energy Permitting Act, a bill that went through your committee. What does it do?
Couple things. Shell Oil, for the last 3 or 4 years now, has looked at exploring off the coast of Alaska. They have spent, believe it or not, more than $3 billion preparing their leases, their applications, their permits, where they think that there could be as much as 25 billion barrels of oil underneath. And yet the EPA, though they approved the clean air permit, they allowed another avenue for folks to appeal the process and delay the permitting. And for them, they have shut down again for this year in terms of what they're going to do. They testified before our committee, sent a strong signal that their shareholders, frankly, won't put up with billions of dollars more delays being spent. So we introduced legislation. It's bipartisan. We've approved it through our committee, Energy and Commerce. It'll be on the floor on Wednesday, and it will set, in essence, the standard for applications for these permits. And once they're approved, it's done. You're not going to be able to fit around the edges and be able to see further delays. It will pass, I predict, on Thursday this week on the House floor. We're going to debate it on Wednesday with a pretty good bipartisan vote to end the efforts to circumvent the process and allow the permits to happen.
So what does this mean for consumers in terms of cost of oil, jobs, gasoline?
A couple things. First of all, it increases our domestic production. Number two, we have seen some studies that this may mean as many as 54,000 U.S. jobs in terms of from start to finish in terms of what it may do. So it's one of the reasons why it has strong bipartisan support and should pass with a pretty good margin when the House takes it up on Thursday.
Now,
and there's similar legislation now introduced in the Senate. So there's some hope that if we have a good vote this week, that it'll set the stage for a vote in the Senate.
Gas prices are currently averaging about $3.60 per gallon. Now that's nearly $1 more than it was a year ago. What can be done to bring down that price?
Couple of things. You know, I think most Americans understand what supply and demand is, and they know what the scenario is. We've had unrest in the Middle East, let's face it. That's number one. But number two, we've had declining production in the Gulf, as well as yearly declining in production in Alaska as well. We use in this country about 19 million barrels a day. We only produce 7. So we are reliant on other nations exporting oil here. So my view, and many in the Congress, I think a majority, is what can we do for not only for domestic production, but also let's look at some things, particularly with our neighbors to the north, with Canada. Let's look at a whole host of things to send the signal that we are serious, knowing that the economy is beginning to bounce back, not hopefully here in the U.S., but also we see it around the world too. But what can we do to increase production so that we can send the signal that we're serious about seeing a reduction in the imports that we accept?
I've read recent news reports that the Trans-Alaska Pipeline faces significant risk due to the declining production in Alaska. How much of a concern do you think that is in terms of a resource that the United States has?
Well, I'm very concerned about it because when the bill was passed back in the mid-70s, once the production of oil, really drops to a certain level, and the pipeline in essence becomes frozen, it's not able to produce, the U.S. then has to dismantle the pipeline. So 20, 30, 40 years down the line, even if you're able to find new oil reserves, there's not going to be a pipeline to bring it back down to Prudhoe Bay. So we need to continue to look. Alaska provides today about 10% of our oil. We've had a 6% decline every single year in production. So it's important, as a longtime supporter of ANWR, but even if you look at some other areas to the north there in Alaska, it makes sense to find other sources so that we can keep that pipeline open, because once it's shut, it's got to be dismantled and it's done. They'll never be able to do this thing again.
Congressman Upton, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, Rob. Thank you.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great videos. For the Heritage Foundation, I'm Rob Bluey.